I'm not prepared, so you hit me with whatever. Hit me with your best shot. Fire away.
Oh, well. Um, it's interesting. I saw this story. I don't know if you saw this on Twitter. It happened up in Hemet, which is up in the desert. Like as you're driving to Las Vegas from here, you go through Hemet. It's a bad place, but it's probably one of the last affordable places in Southern California where you can actually purchase a home as, just a resident.
Right.
And so I saw a story about apparently in Hemet, there was this mom who was in her child's bedroom, in their home, and she was trying to feed the child, but she kept hearing these like loud noises outside, and so she opens the window and sees like right in front of her house, there's these people like doing drugs loudly, like yelling at each other, whatever, literally like a foot away from where her kid is, and so she yells at them to stop, and then they killed her. And it made me come up with a phrase that I think that you'll appreciate. Because Hemet is called Hemeth, basically, for all the drugs that go on. Like it's kind of where LA sort of dumps its garbage. And that's why it's affordable.
I'm sorry, I thought that was LA.
Wait, it's called Seattle.
And so no, you invaded us. I'm sorry, you invaded us.
Oh.
In the 90s, the oppression of California was exported to the Northwest in the 90s, but I will leave that for another day.
And now we have the children of the Gen X burnouts who lived in Seattle and moved here.
Yep.
But it made me think. It made me come up with a phrase that I think you'll appreciate, especially talking about what happened earlier this week, saying that we need Singapore solutions.
Yep.
I think that that's the only thing that's going to stop the drugs, the crime, the things that have happened, especially where it's like. And I think that the first mistake that we made as a society, I know this is a long intro, but I think the first mistake that we made was tolerating that certain areas and certain times of day is a no-go zone. So you have your Skid Rows, you have your neighborhoods of Seattle, you have your Capitol Hills, you have your everything like this. But now
your lake cities,
exactly.
Your white centers,
you're all of Tacoma.
Yes, exactly.
But it's fascinating to me that now it's not even just certain neighborhoods. It's not even just certain times of day. All day, everywhere, at any given time. It's everything everywhere all at once. And so you're like, okay, I think because you tolerated that, the envelope got pushed and pushed and pushed. And so now, what do? Now you have crazy, drug-fueled people at all hours of the day that could murder you at any point, anywhere. It's kind of insane.
It is, and if I may opine briefly on that, or maybe not so briefly, you tell me when to shut up. You edit it however you will. The only question right now in my mind is, are we looking for a privately funded Singapore solution or a publicly funded Singapore solution? I have opinions about which one I would prefer, but something has to be done.
The problem with privately funded is I feel like there is no accountability.
Yes.
I know that the libertarians would be very upset with me, but there's no recourse. There's no I'm sorry, I'm getting paid to do a job.
No,
so publicly funded. There's an impeachable sort of process.
Yes, I'm very much in the, I'm not a real libertarian anymore, if you know what I mean. But when I was a libertarian, I was always more of a Hoppian. And Hans Hermann Hoppe had some good stuff to say about this. I won't say anymore. Okay, I don't want to get things demonetized, but let's just say sometimes people don't belong in a certain place.
Oh.
And if somebody's doing something bad, maybe they don't belong there.
Right.
And maybe they go somewhere else. I think
he just told you to get out of my life.
To the Hoppians, I don't know if there are any Hoppians listen. Physical removal is what this is called. If I may share a story, if not, tell me to shut up. But if I may share a story from my own life, in the People's Democratic Republic of Chazchop. So I go on. Sorry, I mispronounced it. Amazon presents the People's Democratic Republic of Chazchop. Sorry,
only on Amazon Prime.
Yeah. Well, when you get Prime, you get 12 junkies for free. So it's nice.
Really?
You can go through them quicker than you would normally.
I have projects I need done around the house. Can they
I know.
hurry up?
Well, they're on
That-
meth, so they'll just keep working. They'll
Good.
man
Like
out
I
their
need
workers.
string lights hung in the backyard, so please hurry up.
You just give them a Coke and they'll work for 12 hours. It's amazing.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's so nice. But like I go on distance runs. I've subscribed to the Wyatt fasted cardio school. It seems to be working. So I go on distance runs.
And you're also on the Forrest Gump, like, I'm going to run it no matter what, like, at any time of day, any weather, anything like this, like, you'd be running.
Yeah, I mean, that's just life in the Northwest. We get all sorts of weather and you just run. I'm that autistic. I'll just run. But I always, because Seattle, I always stay within a certain radius of my house because I don't feel comfortable leaving it for long periods of time and going on like epic runs through all sorts of parts of the city. So I'm doing a lot of laps. And that is a little boring, but you get your Timeline Earth, you get your podcasts, you listen to your podcasts, you listen to your audiobooks and you run and it's okay. You do laps of the neighborhood. But one thing it has taught me is that it's actually I've actually met the junkies of our neighborhood. And they have also met me via my multiple laps because I will do things like I'll run like 15K sometimes. So I'm doing like laps and laps and laps of the neighborhood. And they know me and I know them and it's all nonverbal, but I look at them and they look at me and they kind of know that I live here. And they kind of know also that a lot of people in Seattle will look away, will not make eye contact with these people. I make eye contact until they look away. And so, it's a typical Trump power move. And it's interesting because I've gotten to know who are sort of it is very interesting. There are people in our neighborhood who all of them clearly need help.
Right.
And I've developed a few categories, if I may share those. There's the man who lives in the abandoned lot opposite our place who clearly is having a rough time, but I don't think is a completely he's not totally lost. I think he just needs somewhere to go.
Probably somebody who isn't their first instinct is not to cut to violence randomly.
Yes. And he makes eye contact with me. I make eye contact with him. He knows me. He nods to me. I nod to him.
You acknowledge.
And I acknowledge. And I'm not I'm like a whatever, man. You stay in your car and I will run by and we'll see each other. There's those people. And I actually feel the worst for them because I feel like they're actually getting the short end of both sticks. But
well, they are. Yeah, I want to talk about that in a minute. But yes.
Yeah, but then there's the absolute, I'm just gonna say it, the absolute degenerates.
Like violent crackhead lunatics.
Yes, violent crackhead lunatics who I
saw them. I saw that band at the Roxy. Great band.
Yeah, great band.
They were really an integral part of the night.
They opened for Rob Zombie. Anyhow, yeah, audio only. I know it's a little bit lost, but that's fine.
I sound like Kamala Harris. I am wearing a blue suit.
Yeah, I am wearing a Rob Zombie Dragula t-shirt, and I am lighting something on fire.
I'm a male. My pronouns are he/him.
Yeah.
I have a mountain superimposed background.
I'm drinking a Rainier beer.
A Rainier beer. I'm talking to two faggots. On the other end, drinking margaritas. One of them is wearing a Thought Criminal t-shirt. The other one is wearing a tank top from an obscure bar in Idaho.
So what you're trying to say is one baguette is talking to two faggots?
Like I say at the grocery store when I'm at the self-checkout, faggot.
That's our term, by the way, just so you know. Anyhow, I'll give you a pass. You didn't know. No. Anyhow, geez, I hope this turns out well in the edit. But there are the people. So I've been running and a domestic dispute explodes out of a almost derelict Nissan truck into my path. And I'm listening to my I think I was actually listening to Machiavelli's The Prince while running. And I'm like, whoa, hold on a sec. I was thinking about maintaining power. And all of a sudden there's a domestic dispute in front of me. And I'm trying to, I have a heart rate to hit. I have times to hit.
It's just the sign of the cross right in front
Exactly. And these people are it's sir, she stole my bike. And it took every ounce of Christian charity within me to not say, you trying to tell me you haven't stolen that bike from someone else, motherfucker? Because Oh, a stolen bike? Isn't that like $1 for that's like your currency between you people. It's just stolen bikes and stolen shit. Everything you have is stolen.
You
I did
missed your
not say
chance.
I did not say that because I did not want to antagonize and I did not feel like having to beat up a crackhead that day.
But Mitch, you
But
missed your
sorry, Mitch. Yeah, Mitch
I
had
know.
something to say.
You missed your chance when they said, "Sir, sir." You should have turned around and said, "It's ma'am."
Ma'am!
Misgendered by the homeless.
I know. Well, no. But this is to bring it back to your point. Why these people are not homeless. They're not actually. They're crack addicts. They're meth addicts.
I knew it was bad when, I go to the same Starbucks I've roughly gone to for the past 12 years. Like, I've seen the changes. I've seen people. I've been going there so long. I know the people who got like the 10-year sabbatical that you get in Starbucks. Like, if you work there long enough, you become a manager. They basically pay you to go wherever you want for a year and all your expenses. Like, they're actually very good to their employees. And one of them just fucked off to Hawaii. And they were all like, oh, yeah, great. The other employees hated him for that. But he deserved it because he had to deal with some shit.
Yep.
And so I noticed the people who
sorry. I work with the general public. I understand the shit that you have to deal with.
The general public.
Yes. I work with them. Yes.
Continue. And so there were so there's a guy at the local Starbucks. I don't want to blow up his spot. I've seen him for over 10 years now. He's very nice. I've talked to him many times. He lives in a van that's basically around the corner.
It's not down by the river.
Close enough. It's by the LA River.
There you go.
And he has 2 Chihuahuas and a bike, and he hangs out at Starbucks all day, I think because he doesn't really have a place to go. But he's basically someone I would consider a local.
Yeah.
Because he goes in there, he doesn't bother anybody. He gets his coffee refill. He'll hang out in there, talk to people. He'll go back out into his van. He'll charge his phone, like whatever. Right. He's not violent. I never heard him get in an argument with anybody, anything like that.
Right.
Then this was about a little over a year ago. The Starbucks there had a new arrival, and it was I don't know what bus this guy came on. He was a wildly violent homeless man who just would 8 a.m. screaming full bore and yelling and attacking the other homeless who basically they're like the 13th and 14th employees. They might as well be. They're there long enough. And I was like, wow, you have a hierarchy that's developing here.
Oh yeah.
For these the violent new clear. And so that guy, I think, the police, this also happens to be the Starbucks that the police go to.
Right.
So this guy was gone within a week. I don't know where they took him, but you're not gonna, not with the lesbian cop there every day. You're not gonna get away with that shit.
The dyke cop will put him in a hold.
Exactly.
Gets non-approved, and she'll do it anyhow. So yeah.
He almost got Floyded.
I know a lot about policing. We'll say all that. We'll just say
yes.
Yes.
Well,
that's all we'll say.
I saw the pictures of you in the Party City cop outfit, and it was.
Yeah,
it was as official as it was disturbing.
The crotch was a little tight, but it's
I did not know that they made costumes that were backless. But you know what? As long as you get good airflow, everyone's happy.
Well, I cut those out, but that's okay.
So Singapore solutions
exactly.
to Seattle problems.
Yeah. No, but it is interesting because there is really a hierarchy of homeless. And I feel really bad for the halfway decent person who has to live in this vacant lot with these other, if I might be so bold, absolute animals. And before people call blow the whistle, the man who is very respectable and nice is African American, and the absolute animals are white. So it's insane. I was running the other day and I saw one gentleman on one lap. They're 1.5 mile laps in my neighborhood. And one lap, he was smoking what I'm guessing is fentanyl. On the second lap, he was shooting up, and I'm like, on the third lap, is he going to be gone? If you know what I mean. As in, no longer spiritually present in his body. Because I was like, holy crap, every lap there was another drug coming out. And I was like, wow, that's impressive even for Seattle. So I know that LA is the same situation, more or less, but it's nuts. It's crazy. Hello?
Oh, sorry. Mike was on mute. I think we're back.
Okay, cool. I just left it going, and I spoke to the recording to you should edit this out. So
I know. I think it would be really funny if you just put it up as is.
as is.
And then people are just like, it'd be great. People are listening to this in their car on their way to work. I'm like, what the fuck just happened? And
I think I'm gonna be editing this, not him.
Well, I gave points. I said Mitch and or Wyatt edit this section out. So that's what I said.
Mitch is going to edit it out and just keep all of his shitty jokes. And you and I are going to sound completely retarded.
Oh, well, that's how we sound normally. So
more than usual.
Oh. Well, I've learned that that's a Wyatt reaction. Oh. Yeah, no, but it is interesting. I don't know where we dropped off. What was the last point we dropped off? And I'll just jump in.
I think it was talking about how you mentioned, kind of like you said animals and then it cut out.
Like, okay. Yeah. So there's some people who starting again, there's some people who really are suffering from mental illness. And I don't think, I think they would benefit from help. There are other people who are absolute animals. And who, like, for example, on a run the other day, I was doing laps, about 1.5 mile laps of my neighborhood. Because again, I kind of want to keep an eye of the neighborhood too. I like to see who's out and about, and I like that they see me and I see them, and there's a panopticon effect, and they kind of know that.
I like that, and I feel like it's something that people need to do more of. I think that people just go to work and they come home, or they work at home, and you don't interact with the people that live around you.
And I'm in Seattle, so people are not really chatty here, but it's like I see you, you see me.
Even if you're on nodding terms, it's better than nothing. It's better than just I get in my car and I drive away and then I come home. I don't interact with people.
Well, we have a lot of, I'm going to alienate a whole section of our very large audience, but
Puerto Ricans.
A whole bunch of fucking tech boys who live in our neighborhood, and I'm not a fan of them. And that's all I'll say about that. And they don't care. They don't care.
Funny. There's this restaurant up in Cupertino. It's like a mom and pop Asian restaurant. And Cupertino used to be like a very sleepy suburb of San Francisco. It's now Apple headquarters and like 18 other startups. And so they said, okay, we're instituting an additional 18% operational dine-in tax for parties of one or more.
Based. Fleece these people for all they're worth. Fleece.
And I'm
them.
like, you know what? If you're going to come in and you're going to drive up rents and you're going to make it so that what should be a $400,000 home is now worth $2.5 million as a tear down. Yeah, fuck them. You're getting 6 figures from Google. What do you care?
Well, I've started identifying as a Kulak extremist, so I say, do it. So I was walking around, and it's interesting when you run a neighborhood. This is a weird episode. Sorry that this is turning into Colin's run blog, but it follows. It connects. Because you get a sense of place and of the place that you live in. And it's interesting how few people actually leave their houses in our neighborhood. Anyhow, so I was doing laps, and there was not our normal gentleman who's actually pretty polite. There was the others, and I instantly clocked them as outsiders, not normally camping at this place. Oh no. And my intuition was well founded because so 1.5 mile loops in the neighborhood, 1 lap, they're smoking something. I'm assuming it's fentanyl.
I didn't know you could smoke fentanyl.
You can.
Mitch, can you smoke fentanyl?
I cannot.
They were smoking something. I don't know if it was fentanyl, but you can smoke anything if you try hard enough, is what I'm going to say.
That was what they said.
It's hard enough.
That's what they said in my elementary school dare class. Someone's like, can you get hooked on phonics? And the officer was like, yeah, if you smoke them.
Nice. Based. Anyhow, get hooked on those phonics, kids. It will not teach you how to read. So I'm doing laps. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like the first lap of the neighborhood, they're smoking something. The second lap of the neighborhood, they were injecting something. And I was like, on the third lap of the neighborhood, what is going to be happening?
What is going to be a suppository? Like what the fuck?
No, but here's the scariest thing. Guess what I saw on the third lap of the neighborhood?
Oh no, I'm scared.
Nothing. They were gone. They went somewhere else. And I'm like, the worst possible outcome that I had not yet thought of is where fuck are they?
They're zooted and gone.
Yeah.
They time traveled.
Yep. So anyhow.
They went back to the 99 WTO protests.
got punched in the face by somebody with a lizard outfit.
God damn
Yeah,
it.
it's just
If those cops didn't use batons, then we wouldn't have these problems now.
well, this will go up on a public forum, so I will refuse comment. But yes,
Singapore solutions.
I mean,
it sounds like
yeah.
a contractor. I want some Singapore solutions. Oh, great! Like I'll hang your drywall. It's Singapore solutions.
They have a very good food scene.
Yeah,
Tasty curry.
yeah. Don't spit on the street.
Don't spit on the street. Yeah. I always say Singapore solution, and I don't actually mean that. What I mean is, can we have somewhere in between what we have now in Singapore?
I think that people criticize Singapore and what Lee Kuan Yew did. And I think it's because they saw some of the extremes of what happened. But when it first started and throughout most of Singapore's, recent history, he was wildly popular because it was like, thank you, my neighborhood is clean. Thank you, I can go to school. It's safe. Like we appreciate that. Like someone who dies and has that level of like people like rendering their garments
Yep.
afterwards, that's impressive, and it goes to show like him saying like, look, the only thing that made us productive is installing AC, so we're putting an AC in every single new building that we build. Like that level of like, wow, like
But I mean the unspoken truth of that too is, and I'm not a Lee Kuan Yew expert, but is that there's a Han Chinese family values at play there that just would not work in America. And
I think
so
it
doesn't translate.
When you have a decimated, tattered social fabric, how do you rebuild that? How? And I think that no one's really come up with a good solution to that.
Consequences.
I think so, and I think the Giuliani broken windows theory makes sense. I think that there is an idea of like, if you fuck up, there's problems. I talked to the manager of the Ralph's, Kroger around the corner, and they had a thing that happened a couple weeks ago where they had this beautiful little display of succulents in the front of the store, as they're wont to do with all their fresh, plants. And in between 1 and 4 a.m., which is the only times when they're closed, a violent homeless went up and just threw the whole thing to the ground, like pottery all over the ground, like huge thing, left a big mess. So 4 a.m. when the key holder comes in, they're like, oh shit, like we have to clean this up.
Yep.
And I talked to the girl and I said, what happened to your display? I saw a few of them on a cart that were left. And she's like, these are the survivors. Like the rest, were destroyed. And then I had to text the picture to loss prevention. I had to send to my store manager and to my district manager. Like I had to do all these things. And then I had to clean it up too. Like you just made a lot of work for me for the whole.
You're triggering me as somebody who has to clean up after people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll take everything that's left. So I bought the remainder of them. And they were already at discount, so they were at like double discount. So
that's very nice of you, Wyatt. That's very nice.
Well, because I was like, I know they're like, well, I mean, the good thing is we have our Halloween display coming in, so we have pumpkins. Yeah. Those are harder to destroy. But I talked to the store manager out there a couple days ago, and he's like, yeah, like we have cameras, we have the little police thing, that was a little robot that flashes with the blue light in the blue light special in the parking lot. We have all that stuff, and he's like, and still we have people that come in the middle of the day and cause trouble in our store, and then we have to call people. And I walked by today, there were 2 fire trucks in front that had the ambulance thing, so I'm like, God knows what happened in there.
Yeah. But Smashing Pumpkins should only be a band, and it's a great band, but it should only be a band.
Yeah. Exactly. And so seeing that, I'm like, that's sad. And so I was like, I see something like that, and I'm like, how do I make my community better? And I think that you're doing
consequences,
and I think also I want to know the people who live around me.
Yes.
I want them to be aware of my schedule. I want to know their schedule. And if you see something off, I'm not talking about like some boomer being like, there was someone in Toyota Tacoma that parked in front of my, that's the landscaper. I mean, like literally being aware of the neighborhood around you, I think is important. And I think that most people could do that and do a better job at that. And you could keep an eye on what happens around you.
Can I share another anecdote? If I may?
Please.
And this just happened. These are all true stories. Mitch, I'm sorry if you have to edit this out, but it connects. I promise. So we have Seattle is really shittily designed, as are most American cities. And we have right in front of my house, we have what is essentially a blind four-way stop. Oh, we have a blind four-way intersection with no stop signs. And so we get traffic accidents on the regular, as the kids say. in front of my right in front of my house. And so it's not uncommon when I hear a crunch, I just go outside because I want to make sure that nobody's dying because of a car accident. This is just sadly probably rings true for many people around the country of just really shittily designed infrastructure. This salute, I think at least 50% of the accidents would be prevented by stop signs. The city of Seattle, in its infinite fucking retarded wisdom, will not put up stop signs. And so what we get is a lot of traffic accidents. So the other week, just trying to chill, do some stuff on a Sunday and hear crunch. My wife's like, traffic accident? And I'm like, I think so. I go outside and there's two people who probably both, have a head injury and are a little dazed because,
Jesus.
it happens all the time. And so it is interesting. I'm not trying to make myself, I'm very Lutheran here. Not trying to make myself look good, but only me and another neighbor came out to help. Nobody else gave a shit. And that is sadly so normal for where I live. And, it was me and this.
There's a Seattle freeze, as Kyle says.
It was me and a 35-year-old and a 65-year-old. Now I'm not young, but I'm not 65. And so I took on the burden of pushing the cars off the road to, for me, because I didn't want the 65-year-old to get a hernia or some shit. Right. He was there in spirit and I appreciate him. He's great. But I was like, I'll do it, pushing the cars off the road so that they don't get ticketed for having had an accident. And it was very interesting because the people in the accident had clearly not been paying attention to what was going on. They're like, well, we just call 911, right? And me and the 65-year-old neighbor are like, oh no, don't even bother. They're not coming. And they're like, the look of like just dazed shit-lib surprise on their face, like they're not coming. I'm like, oh no, they don't arrive for accidents. We'll just push the car off the side of the road. And this teenager I was helping get his car off the road was like, sort of like, you could tell he was like, maybe it was the head wound it wasn't really a head wound. I think he was just in a little bit of shock, but he was like, why aren't there police here? And I was like, and then his mom, who lived in the neighborhood, walked up and was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? So I was like, it seems like he's fine. Like the car was knackered, completely out. Motor oil knackered. Well, for Fred, these British terms. Motor oil everywhere. I actually went back inside and changed out of my UGG slippers because I'm that basic, and went into I changed into my steel-toed work boots that have oil grip because I had to push a car through motor oil to get it off the road. But it was interesting because his mom came up and she's like, where are the cops? And we're like, yeah, they don't respond to traffic incidents in Seattle anymore.
Jesus.
And the look on her face was one of just like, it was like that meme with the lady looking in like the figures and theorems, and she was
and that like Brazilian soap opera,
yeah, exactly. And she was like, "What?" And I was trying to be good, and all I said is, "Yeah, remember that next time you vote." I think is what I said.
Oh,
because it's like
we'll call you Scott Pressler. You just signed up voters.
Because why? It is interesting that like it was the 65 and the 35-year-old in the neighborhood who decided to go out and help. And like, I actually technically so there was a whole thing too. A car had jumped the curb, thankfully didn't go into somebody's yard. It almost did. Because it was a sort of a high speed accident. They were driving way too fast. Both of them were teenagers, typical thing. And the other lady, the other person in the accident, her like airbags had gone off, like this whole thing. She actually, I think had more trauma from the airbags than from the impact. And like her car was on the side of the road, and I was like, oh my gosh, like we're going to have to push this car off the road and keep it from going down the hill. It's going to be a whole thing. Thankfully, her car started and I was able to drive it to the side of the road. And I won't say this where this is in case somebody, technically you're not supposed to move cars when they've been in an accident, but it was that or leave the intersection blocked because the police wouldn't show up. So it was literally up to the people in the neighborhood. All of this is a horror story. All of this is bad, but the white pill is that at least two people were willing to go out and help. And, I don't know. And it was interesting because I was talking to the mother of the teenage boy who was in the accident. She's like, thank you so much for doing this. And I was like, I told her, I was like, it's just the burden of us living in this place where they won't put up stop signs. So
right.
That's an anecdote, but I do think it's indicative of this, like, what the hell are we paying for?
It's interesting you mention that because in the neighborhood that's next to us, they installed a roundabout, which I have been sending like updates to some friends of mine about, like, they put in this. I sent it to Fred. I just like to piss him off.
Yeah.
Because it's a European style roundabout in a three-way intersection.
Americans can't handle that.
But there's stop signs at every end of the roundabout, so it's not even a
What?
real. I know it's this fucked up style intersection. Like it's not biblically accurate.
No, that's none of these words are in the Bible. Yeah,
exactly. And so I kept sending updates to Fred. I'm like, look, and he's like, why can't you all learn? Like, why can't you just learn how to use this roundabout? And I'm like, well, that's not what he sounds like, but it's fine, close enough. And I was telling him, like, okay, today a truck got stuck halfway in the middle and then had to like back up like about 18 times to get through. Today, a car just went right through. And then the other day, Kyle and I had some furniture in the back of the truck, and we're pulling up to the stop sign before the roundabout, and a woman drove around us, blew through a stop sign behind us, then blew through the roundabout stop sign and went down the opposite way of the roundabout, like counterclockwise, and almost ran over some construction workers, and then just sort of barreled through the neighborhood.
Saints preserve us. These people it's
there's
bad.
a sign in the neighborhood that says, thank you to Nithya Raman, who's our Kashama Sawant, our councilwoman, who is a democratic socialist, who approved this after a study, approved these traffic circles. I'm like, look, at least the democratic socialists are approving infrastructure projects.
Right.
But the problem is there's little speed bollards every like 5 feet. And
because they hate cars.
Per hour zone.
Yes. They hate cars.
And no one abides by them.
I know. Well, so if I may, this totally connects, I promise. So while we're having this, like, this took at least an hour to get these cars off the road, the traffic accident and all this stuff. And I was like, it was interesting too, because anyhow, people are like blowing through the intersection while there's an active like accident aftermath, and we're like, slow the fuck down, and they're like swearing at us, and we're swearing back at them. It's like, what are you doing? Like, this is why you get accidents, because you're all fucking retarded.
I just started screaming, like, slow the fuck down. I want to have like a bag of tomatoes in my car.
Yeah.
I just throw at people.
Well, this is and this is a residential street. This is not a 2-lane arterial road. This is like a neighborhood.
But some like Waze app or something sent people down that street.
Well, so you know what caused this problem?
Jews.
Bus lanes.
Up. It's true.
The bus lanes narrowed I won't tell people exactly where I am, but they narrowed a main north-south thoroughfare in Seattle. And because of that, people take the back roads, with kids on bicycles and stuff, and elderly dog walkers, and like just people. And so they'll drive 45 fucking miles an hour through our neighborhood because of the bus lanes. And so there's that. And it's also interesting too, because the simple solution would be to at least put stop signs. And so I was talking to some neighbor. There was the wife of the 65-year-old came out and was like, had some legal background apparently in the city. And I was like, could we not theoretically put up a stop sign? And she was like, well, don't do that because the city will sue you. And I was like, how about the neighborhood strongly encourages you slow down sign? And she kind of shut the fuck up because she could tell I was a disagreeable person. I was like, how about that? Could we do that? I mean, could we do that? If people can spray paint random shit in the middle of, Capitol Hill intersections, can we not spray paint slow the fuck down?
I love the thing that's like drive like my kids live here, and I'm like, I'm accelerating. Drive like your kids live here, gives a fuck.
Yeah, the issue is it's a total blind corner. Like, it's on a hill, so you can't see, and people will rocket at like crazy speeds through. So yeah, I don't know. Anyhow, it's an anecdote. You take from it what you will, but it's it is sad when you as a resident of the neighborhood have to deal with stuff that the police should deal with, and it's not even unusual to you. That's sad.
Right.
That's sad.
That's true.
That's decidedly non-Singaporean.
No.
Because also too, there's that part in the back of your brain, you're like, oh shit, like if I make a mistake, am I legally liable in this situation for helping? And I don't know. And of course, my intuition is to help, so I will help. But I'm like, oh, do I have to be careful? Like you know what I mean? Because it's an accident. It's a scene of an accident. You're like, but the cops aren't coming. Okay, I guess it's up to me, who knows nothing about, you know, like traffic law, to
And
make
you have to
these.
put on that backless police uniform and scare the shit out of everybody in the neighborhood.
Well, you know, I guess I could, but it stays in the closet.
It's called protect and serve, and you emphasize the serve.
Exactly.
Well, Mitch, what was that? What was the topic you wanted to get into? Because
Sorry for this side, but
No, you're
it's
fine.
just
We have
on
one
point.
more.
Yeah.
Well, we only have like 14 minutes before we have
Yes.
to get going, so it's
But-
probably not prudent to bring up.
Yes, you were going to bring us something linguistic related or something.
Right, but it gets into a bigger philosophical
You're talking about
discussion.
Germanic stuff, and I was
Don't
like,
worry about it. You know what you could do? You could edit this into one Mondo episode.
Mondo.
You could.
It's a
Is there
legal philosophical question, but it has a tie-in that is a linguistic
the
question
Strasbourg oaths were misappropriated.
a linguistic question that you would know the answer to,
You.
I would assume. So I'll lead with the linguistic question.
Yep.
The word purpose in English,
Yep.
I cannot think that has a Latinate root. Does it come from a Germanic
I'm looking it up right now.
language? There's
I'm
a
looking it up
very
right
good
now.
reason why I'm asking this question.
Okay, let me just look it up. It is not. It is not. I will tell you right now. I'm almost certain it's not Germanic.
I can't think of a close cognate that would be Latinate.
Old French purpose, an aim, intention, from purposer, which.
So two words that have been pushed together. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense now.
Yep.
Okay. See, I was just thinking of one word. Okay, that I got you now. So then there is a legal philosophy that is called, so the conservative legal philosophy is called originalism, right? And
Right.
Wyatt and I have talked about this before on the podcast. But the other side, which I just recently heard the actual name for, is called purposivism or purposivism.
Oh Lord.
So
Both are bad.
right, so purposive and then add ism to it. So there are people who are discussing how you actually should pronounce this and where the stress should go. And I was thinking it might, have the stress difference would have a Latin versus Germanic reasoning behind, but
yep.
So anyway, however you're supposed to pronounce that word, I prefer purposivism.
Yeah, I think that sounds best.
Yeah, because it gets to the point of the root, I think.
Yeah.
The general philosophy is originalism is based in text, history, and tradition. So the more conservative legal minds and legal scholars. Yeah, exactly. But the more conservative legal minds and scholars think we need to look, if we're reading and trying to interpret a statute or law, we need to understand how the writers at the time meant it to mean, and through text, history, and tradition, figure out how we can then interpret it for today's use. Versus purposivism is, well, how can we interpret this statute into today's language and make it purposive, I guess. I hate that word to begin with because it just seems very contrite and made up. But you understand my point, right? So the more progressive idea is, how do we see the consequences of making this decision legally based on an original statute? So two very different views of law and legal philosophy. It has been brought up in a podcast that I listened to, how we can relate this to gun rights. And I actually thought it was an interesting conversation, and I wanted to get you guys to weigh in on this. So
Um,
if we're going with the more conservative view and we're going with originalism, the phrase in the Constitution that we have the right to keep and bear arms, then how do we define the word arms? Because if you base that on originalism, the word arms would technically mean whatever weapons that were in existence when the
yep,
statute was, or the Constitution in
So
this
the
case, was
musket
written.
argument.
yep.
Versus clearly the people who wrote this did not foresee the existence of an automatic weapon and the ability for those automatic weapons to do the quote unquote damage that the leftists claim that they do. So if we're going by originalism, should we then therefore say that people cannot own assault weapons?
I have to
So
be
by the conservative argument,
I have to
should
be
we
so
say
careful
that?
here. Well, and so I have to be so careful here because I know where this is going to go up. I guess I will attempt to answer your question if I may, while skirting the issue if I can. Um, I think this maybe I don't want to speak for your experience, but this is why I'm not a conservative. Um, I think this is, and I'm not really a libertarian anymore, but this is an area where I may be a little bit more libertarian, at least in attitude, if not theory. The Constitution is kind of a cope, and was implemented by a coup, which is true. And I think this kind of attitude of, well, what does the Constitution mean in our current time is sort of, I don't know. I would say you have the right to defend yourself. I think that's what the Second Amendment means.
By any means necessary?
I mean, well, if do you have a right to bear arms or not?
I can have all the bare arms that I want.
Well, and some of us like bigger bear arms than others, and some
Oh.
of us like otter arms, and it's okay. It's
Oh.
fine. No judgment. But you know what I mean? Like, I think this is I know this is flippant, and I apologize. You can edit it to make it look a little bit nicer. Or keep me as an asshole. It's fine. I'm okay with being an asshole. But I do think there's the ho-humming about what the Constitution means. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a laudable pursuit. The problem is that you're competing against people who don't care.
Right. So I think that a lot
that's
of
my
this sort of
thing.
like originalism needs to have a set definition and we move it along.
I mean, also too, like the Constitution comes after the fact, right? It's always, and this is how every law is like this, right? Laws are only made after something happens.
Right.
Like that's the nature of law. Law is always lagging in time, and I mean, I guess, Mitch, to sort of not answer your question, I guess my answer is humans have the right to defend themselves. And if the Constitution supports that, I think it's great. And I think it does. That's my personal interpretation of it. If somebody is going to use the Constitution to curtail that, I disagree with that. And if that means dethroning the Constitution from some sort of status, I guess that's what it means. I mean, because it's all in the interpretation in the end. So not really a great answer, but
this original question that I posed was, a jumping off point, because I appreciate, your willingness to sort of dive in, but it leads to a further question.
Yeah, please.
And a very linguistic question.
Yep.
We have seen, and you and I have talked about on some of the Wandering Humanist episodes before, of the left's penchant, if I may use that word,
as they say in France,
to reclaim and redefine words in a way that certain aspects of society do not agree with, right? We've talked about this.
Yep.
And it is, now that I'm really reflecting on these two legal philosophies, I'm wondering, oh, wait a minute. Is this the left almost being smart and trying to play our own games against us by saying, Well, this is where we are literally redefining words. And so now you have to interpret this statute by our new definition.
Eh, eh,
And
Yeah,
screw text history, tradition, originalism,
yeah.
all of that stuff. But if we redefine racism, if we redefine gender, if we redefine this, that, and the other, and we put these specific definitions to them, then you have to honor that in your legal decision.
Well, if I may invoke Paul Gottfried just a little bit, I do think that this is a mistake that was made in with good intention, as many mistakes are, by conservatives at some point in the latter part of the 20th century, where conservatives went because right text based, because spectrum personalities, because they're like, well, the Constitution, the Constitution, the Constitution. The problem is you know it's that line, right? It's a little bit like that line from Hamlet, right? Like the devil can quote scripture at his will, right? Like
Better than the line from Hamilton.
Hamlet.
So I said better than the line from Hamilton.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, but it's like, great, you're getting a hold of this term and you're using it against us. And I think this is the problem with holding up the Constitution as some sort of divine document. It's a great document, but it is not scripture. It is not infallible. It it has it is written at a time by certain people with a certain understanding of how the world works. And I think that Paul Gottfried's understanding of like legal tradition actually preserves rights better. I think if you go, okay, in English common law, it was always understood, at least maybe not all, for a long period, it was understood that a law abiding citizen could defend himself. Themselves will make it gender neutral. I think that's that understanding of tradition along with the text. I think, Mitch, to get to your point, my critique of that whole thing is that the left has taken the text out of the tradition and is using it against the tradition. And I think the conservatives are falling prey to this. They're going, yeah, but the text says, not realizing that there's a tradition behind it.
Well,
and I don't
know who you have to thank for putting the tradition back into the Constitution is, of all people, Ross Perot, because he had and purchased an original copy of the Magna Carta and then put it on loan to the National Archives and Smithsonian and other display institutions. So they displayed the Magna Carta, earliest legal document, along with the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and everything like that, to show like this is where it started, and to educate kids and things like that. I think
it
that's
didn't
so
start with
important.
America. It didn't start with America,
and it provides the context. And you're like, oh,
mm-hmm.
Oh wow! And then you realize that I'm standing in front of a document that's almost 1,000 years old, and you start to get like very queasy.
Yeah.
But there is something I think that's important about that having an understanding and respect for that tradition.
And maybe, thank you, White. Maybe this is just me as a medievalist, but I do think that that's important. And I think that the best part about America is our willingness to do new things. And I think that's also our biggest weakness, because we shed all of the historical tradition, or at least we attempt to, and then that leaves gigantic sort of open areas in our armor. And I think that's people who take advantage of that. So
it's true.
I guess to sort of wrap up the point is, I hate to sound conspiracy theorist-esque, but I've recently, again, as you and I have talked about, Colin, I've become this believer that the left made a concerted effort to take over education for a very specific reason.
Oh yeah.
To then further a specific way of thinking and an agenda that was very But,
yeah, they did it in France, they did it in Russia, they did it in Germany, they did it in England, and of course they would do it in America. I mean, it makes sense, right?
So it takes a lot of foresight and forethought to come up with a plan to do something like that. And when I'm having a conflict in my brain of conservatives constantly tell everyone else, oh, look at the left, they act on emotion, they act on the right now, they act on the let me show you something that will improve your life right now, but will make everything horrible in the future. And they focus on that stuff, but at the same time, they also have a long goal. They have a long con, if you will,
Mhm.
to play these games of, oh, let me infect education, let me
Yep.
now change meanings of words very slowly, very
Yep.
deliberately,
Yep.
to then maybe have an effect later in the legal system that we've
Yep.
created in this
It's like
country.
Merriam-Webster recognizing new words they shouldn't.
So I hate to give them more credit than they might be due, but it's almost scary to me, because it's like, what do we have to combat something like that?
I think this is not an answer, qua answer. It's not a capital A answer. I do think,
Because
if
I've given you an impossible question to answer.
if I may, well, I can give you an initial reaction, which is that I think this is something I've attempted to do on my channel, me and Elliot particularly, reject conservatism. There is, and this is not new to us. I mean, Michael Malice has been saying this forever. There is
Yeah.
nothing left to conserve.
It's moving at the speed. It's the progressivism moving at the speed limit.
Yeah. How about we build something better?
Hmm.
Which is far more
What if we build
proactive.
back better?
Not build back better. Let's build something better. Why would we build backwards? I mean, it's gone. It's gone. And I know that that's not really an answer, Mitch, but I think that's an attitude, if that makes sense, that you have to adopt. And I think with the attitude, answers slowly will start coming. And I think they are, at least for me, for others that I've talked to. I remain hopeful. I think that if you can just let go of the conservatism as a culture and realize that it was never going to, provide what it said it would, then you can start thinking in different directions. And I think that it's scary, it's new, but I think it's necessary because it's going to peter out at some point. Why not sooner rather than later? That's me.
On that note, with Peter's out, I think we can call it an evening. We have so many more topics we want to talk about with you. Maybe we'll do another recording next week to cover more stuff. But yes, thank you, Colin.
Well, thanks for having me on.
If anyone out there is a purposivism or purposivist or whatever, go fuck yourself.